All right, so let's say there's this company, right? And they're just not clicking. Hiring tons of people, but it's like nobody's in the right spot, nothing's running smoothly.
Ah, sounds like they need someone to come in and shake things up a bit.
Exactly. Someone who can come in with fresh eyes and be like, okay, here's where your job descriptions are all messed up. That's where our focus is for this deep dive occupational analysts.
It's like being a detective for careers, figuring out how to make things actually work.
Totally. So in our research, we've been diving deep into RoleCatcher's guides on this. What's your take on how they describe these occupational analyst folks?
Well, they really nail the whole data side of things. These are professionals who live and breathe data. I mean, they're analyzing jobs, looking at skills gaps. They're all about helping organizations get their act together and, let's be honest, save some cash.
Yeah, that bottom line is always a factor. But it's not just about crunching numbers, is it? I mean, the guy talks about how important reading comprehension and critical thinking are in this field.
Oh, absolutely. You've got to be able to read between the lines of those job descriptions, understand the company culture. It's a lot more nuanced than it might seem.
Right, like you're piecing together a puzzle to really get what's going on in the organization.
And once you understand the puzzle, that's where the critical thinking comes in. You need to be able to see solutions, you know? Like maybe they think they need to hire 5 new people, but you're like, hold on, let's restructure these roles instead.
Oh, that's a good point. So you're not just identifying problems, you're coming up with creative ways to fix them.
Precisely. And that's where things get really interesting because you're not just dealing with numbers anymore, you're dealing with people. That's where active listening comes in. You got to hear everyone out, understand their perspectives, and then you got to convince them that your solution is the way to go.
Which is where I'm guessing the whole persuasion aspect comes into play.
You got it. It's this really interesting blend of analytical skills and, people skills. You need both to be successful as an occupational analyst.
So it sounds like being an occupational analyst, you need to be a bit of a people person too,
Oh,
right?
for sure. You need those people skills.
Because otherwise you might just drive everyone crazy with all your data and analysis.
Well, there's that, but there's also the fact that you're often dealing with, sensitive situations. Like what happens when you uncover inefficiencies that might mean people lose their jobs?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. There's got to be a human side to this job too, right?
Absolutely. The RoleCatcher guide touches on that, actually. They talk about how important it is to be empathetic and what's the word they used? Resilient, able to handle those tough conversations and help people through those transitions.
Right, because you're not just there to optimize a spreadsheet. You're dealing with real people's lives and livelihoods.
Exactly. And that can be emotionally draining. The guide even mentions that explicitly, that it can be a tough part of the job.
And on top of that, you've got the constant pressure of staying up to date.
Oh, tell me about it. The field's changing so fast. Like, you've got AI coming in, automation, remote work. It's a whole new world of work out there.
So even if you think you've got it all figured out, there's always going to be something new to learn, right?
Exactly. The guide talks about certifications like the Certified Occupational Analyst, COA, and how those can be really helpful for staying on top of things.
So it's not just a one and done kind of career. It's like this constant process of learning and evolving.
Right. And that's what makes it exciting too. You're always challenged, always growing.
So you've convinced me. Occupational analysis is a dynamic and future-proof career. But let's say someone listening is thinking, okay, I want in. Where do I even start?
Well, a solid foundation is key.
Of course, of course.
The RoleCatcher guide suggests a few different paths.
Yeah.
They highlight a background in the social sciences as being really valuable.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Things like psychology, sociology, or even business administration.
Right, right. Because you're basically getting into the nitty-gritty of how people operate.
Right. Exactly. You're learning to analyze behavior, how to navigate those complex group dynamics, all skills that translate really well into the world of occupational analysis.
Makes sense. But is there like a more direct path? Like if you're thinking, okay, I want to dive headfirst into this whole workplace optimization thing.
Yeah, absolutely. The guide mentions industrial organizational psychology.
Oh, I've heard of that.
It's fascinating stuff. It's all about human behavior, but specifically in the workplace. So, analyzing job satisfaction, how to get teams working at their best, that kind of thing.
Okay, cool. So let's say you've got your degree, you're feeling good. What's next? How do you actually get your foot in the door?
Well, experience is key, right?
Of course.
And the RoleCatcher guide really emphasizes the value of internships and entry-level positions, especially in HR or those organizational development departments.
I see. So it's a chance to apply what you've learned in the real world.
Exactly. You get to see firsthand how organizations tick. You build your network.
Speaking of networks, I mean, the guide also talks about networking as being super important.
It's huge. It's not just what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
Especially in this field where you're often the one advocating for change, trying to get people on board with your recommendations, having those connections can be really helpful.
Absolutely. Any specific tips on how to build those connections?
The guide mentions attending industry events,
Right.
or joining professional organizations, things like SHRM.
Ah, yes, the Society for Human Resource Management.
Exactly. Great way to rub shoulders with the right people, stay updated on what's happening in the field.
It's all about staying ahead of the curve, especially these days.
You got it.
Which actually brings us to another point I wanted to touch on. This whole AI revolution that's happening right now. It seems like occupational analysts could play a big role in that, right?
Oh, absolutely. The way companies operate is changing right before our eyes, and someone needs to be there to help them navigate it all.
And figure out what it all means for the future of work. It's a lot to think about.
It is.
Well, I think we've definitely given our listeners a lot to chew on today. This whole world of occupational analysis, it's definitely more than meets the eye. There's the data, the people skills, this whole future of work angle. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
It really is.
And for anyone out there who's thinking this might be their calling, I highly recommend checking out RoleCatcher's resources.
How?
They've got some amazing guides that dive even deeper into all of this.
Couldn't agree more. It's a great place to start.
Well, on that note, thanks so much for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time.